Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom.
It's day 2 of our food unit. But instead of talking about real food, we're talking about food idioms. Idioms that use fruit and vegetables in them. And they're very popular. I think it would be a good idea to learn some of these and learn to use them in the right situations. Unfortunately, I've heard some English learners use idioms but use them incorrectly. I think that's even worse than trying to use the idiom. So unless you're sure, don't use it. And there are a couple that are overused. Can I just mention it's raining like cats and dogs, or it's raining cats and dogs? Yeah, I'm tired of hearing that one. We really don't use that one very often, but I hear it a lot in Taiwan. Try to use one that seems to be quite popular on maybe some TV shows you've been watching, or maybe in a film. Double check with a foreign friend if you have one, just so you know that you're using them correctly. They are helpful. I know that if I ever use a Chinese idiom, oh, everyone's so impressed. But you also want to use those correctly, because then you sound like you're trying to be smarter than you are. Just be careful with them. That's my advice.
Yeah, I try to be careful with the 成语 in Chinese because if you say one, they praise you ridiculously and it just puts too much attention on me, so I try to avoid using them altogether.
It feels like you're showing off.
That too, yeah. It seems like you're showing off, and also they just relish so much attention on you that I don't deserve. So yeah, I avoid using flowery language when I can. But, sometimes it's fun to use idioms and phrases that use fruit because we eat things every day, and fruit and vegetables are definitely part of our diet. And remember, last time we talked about going bananas. Hopefully you're going bananas for our program, or going nuts for English study. And we also talked about something having to do with lemons. Like you said, you bought a computer that turned out to be a real lemon.
No, it's bad.
And you had to change the hard drive and stuff like that. So those are pretty useful idioms, and hopefully you will use them in conversation. Today we're going to switch over to vegetables. We've got beans, and we've got cucumbers, and we've got potatoes.
Yum.
So let's get to it, everybody. Let's read the entire contents of our lesson right now.
Yesterday's idioms revolved around fruit, but today we're giving vegetables center stage. Here are some healthful phrases. Full of beans. Someone who's full of beans is particularly energetic, optimistic, or enthusiastic. This idiom goes all the way back to 14th century Europe. Back then, horses were fed with beans, grown exclusively for animals. The horses' owners perceived that their steeds became much more lively and wanted to gallop everywhere after such a meal. Cool as a cucumber. This simile describes someone who possesses a great sense of calm, bravery, and daring, and especially a person who finds it easy to cope with high-pressure situations. If you can suppress your emotions and keep your head, you're certainly as cool as a cucumber. The explanation for this is simple. A cucumber's interior is always significantly cooler than the outside air, potentially by as much as 11 degrees Celsius. Hot potato. You may be as cool as a cucumber, but can you overcome the problems posed by a hot potato? This phrase describes a situation or subject that is controversial, awkward, or embarrassing in some way. It might come from a longer phrase, to drop something like a hot potato. This means to quickly avoid being associated with one of these troubling topics. Both idioms refer to the fact that a freshly baked potato is so hot that you don't want to hold it in your hands. Potatoes' thick skins and high water content help them to retain heat. There are plenty more fruit and vegetable idioms out there. If you don't like the ones we've presented, well, that's just a case of sour grapes.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Let's get on with our lesson. We're talking about 6 ways to flavor your conversation with fruit and vegetable idioms. Now, yesterday's idioms revolved around fruit. Remember, we were talking about bananas. And we talked about lemons. We didn't really talk about apples so much. There are a lot of idioms with the word apple in them, like, hey, you can't compare these two things. It's like apples and oranges, or you're the apple of my eye. But today, we're going to switch over and talk about vegetables. And we're going to give vegetables center stage. We're going to pay all our attention, or give all our attention to vegetables today. And here are some healthful phrases. Healthful, that's a troublesome word here.
Kind of hard to say, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people will say healthy phrases, but I guess technically you're supposed to say healthful.
No, they're both correct. I looked that up, Tom.
Yeah, they are both correct, although healthful does mean it brings about health, or healthy describes the actual condition of that thing itself.
And healthful is also actually much newer. That's why people are trying to use it more, I think.
Okay, very good. But these phrases are healthy or they're healthful. And indeed, basically what we mean is that they will help your conversation and you'll have more lively conversations with people if you know these idioms.
Okay, the first one, guys, is full of beans, which is really interesting. Remember, our author is British, and his definition is definitely correct. But both Tom and I know a different definition, which isn't quite as nice. So we'll do that one second. The first one is if you're full of beans, or you say your friend's full of beans, it just means they're really full of energy. They look really enthusiastic to you. Maybe they're jumping around. They're really excited. They're optimistic, which is awesome. If you're optimistic, you think the best thing out there is going to happen. If you're realistic, you know that the world sometimes doesn't play fair. But if you're a pessimistic kind of person, you think everything's going to turn out bad. You don't want to be a pessimistic, guys. You want to be optimistic, full of hope. This idiom goes all the way back to 14th century Europe. It's a long time ago, so that's the 1300s. And back then, instead of feeding horses with hay or straw that we do today, they fed them with beans, which I had never known until I read this. Very interesting. And those beans were grown exclusively for animals, meaning the beans that horses ate were not fed to humans.
They were not meant to be fed to humans. This is similar to where I'm from, where they grow a lot of corn, but the corn that is grown there is grown for animals so that they can produce meat, like steaks and pork chops and stuff like that. People should not eat that corn, so I guess it was similar back in the 1300s here, because horses were fed with those beans, but those beans were exclusively only for animals. Okay, so the horses' owners perceived, or they saw, that their steeds became much more lively and wanted to gallop everywhere after such a meal. Now, we've got different words for horses here. A steed is basically a very strong horse, okay? And especially it's a horse for riding, okay? So people will ride this horse for transportation, or maybe they're going to participate in those horse jumping shows or whatever.
Maybe, yeah.
So indeed, they thought that their steeds were more lively and more active when they had beans to eat. So yeah, that's what full of beans means. They've got all this kind of energy and enthusiasm and optimism. And of course, when horses walk around, we use the word gallop. I guess that kind of describes the sound that they make.
When they run, yeah.
Gallop, 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 yeah.
Uh-huh. Now, guys, the other definition that you'll often hear from Americans is if someone's full of beans, you're saying they're full of nonsense. That whatever they're saying, you don't believe. You know, they're full of hot air, they're full of nonsense. Whatever. He's full of beans. Like, what does he know? He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's a more, I think, negative way to use full of beans, but we often will hear that particular usage. Again, so many of our idioms can be used in different situations, so you just have to kind of look at the context, the situation itself, to know which one they're using if you're hearing it. If you're using it yourself, you probably figured out the situation that you want to express something using a fruit or vegetable idiom with. We're going to continue on. Our next vegetable will be a cucumber. Cool as a cucumber is one of my favorite ones. Do you like this one, Tom?
I love it. It's one of my favorite idioms, and I use it all the time. So yes, indeed, cool as a cucumber is what we're going to be talking about next. So let's get to it here. This simile describes someone who possesses a great sense of calm, bravery, and daring, and especially a person who finds it easy to cope with high-pressure situations. Okay, so remember a cucumber is like a long and green vegetable that is light green on the inside, okay? A cucumber. And cucumbers are often pickled to make pickles. They preserve them in jars with a kind of brine or something and maybe some spices or something like that. And then they make pickles out of cucumbers. But yes, if you're cool as a cucumber, that means you're very calm, you're a brave person, and you're daring, which also means brave. And of course, you can cope with high-pressure situations. So we all hope to work for a person like this. If there's some kind of crisis with the company, that person can remain calm in the face of danger and lead us through the storm instead of being a chicken and cowering in the corner.
Or screaming because they're so upset.
Exactly. So, yeah, we hope that our leaders will be as cool as a cucumber. And we're describing this as a simile, which is a part of speech, which means you compare one thing and another thing, but they're different kinds of things, like to be as brave
as a
fox, brave as a lion, etc.
Yeah.
Those are similes.
Yeah, crazy like a fox. We're going to continue talking about what it means to be cool as a cucumber and some of these great vocabulary words in this paragraph. But first, guys, we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher.Hi
everyone, my name is Jenny. 我们今天继续来看第一单元，我们要谈英文里面很有趣的跟蔬菜水果有关的片语。好，我们在前面学到了是跟水果有关，那么今天呢，我们要谈的主角是蔬菜。好，这里有一个片语 give vegetables center stage。我们知道 center stage 当然就是指舞台的中央，也就是焦点，所以今天内容焦点就是蔬菜。好，这个蔬菜的片语，第一个 full of beans， 这个片语的来源其实也很有趣，它就告诉你说一个人呢 full of beans 是表示精力充沛，非常乐观，或者是很热情。当然他提到来源是从14世纪那个时候，在欧洲呢，马儿会吃豆子。好，当然这个豆子是为马特别准备种的，这样子的豆子。这一边说到他吃了这种豆子以后呢，就变得非常的精力旺盛，所以说才会用这个片语，今天我们拿来指一个人精力非常的充沛 full of beans。 不过这边有一个地方要稍微注意一下，就是当他提到说喂食这些马这种豆子是怎么样的豆子呢？好，看到了吗？ Beans 后面的 grown exclusively for animals， grown 当然这是一个过去分词，这个过去分词其实也就是在讲前面这个豆子 which were grown， 也就是他们这些豆子是专门被种来给动物吃的。好，所以要注意这个过去分词的 grown 它的来源。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. We're on our vegetable idioms in day 2 of our food unit. And we first talked about being full of beans. 2 different definitions. One, you could be really describing someone who has a lot of energy, who's optimistic, enthusiastic. For me, I think a lot of young kids when I think of this particular definition. Young kids never seem to run out of energy. We'll often say they're like the Energizer bunny. There's this commercial when we grew up with this bunny. It's a stuffed bunny, and it had batteries in it, and it never ran out of juice. So kids just seem to go, go, go. They jump around. They are like they're full of beans, really. They're jumping all over. But the other definition that you can use, especially in America, is when someone's telling you something, you totally don't believe it, or you just think they're full of nonsense. You could say, he's full of beans. That's the more negative definition, but we definitely use it a lot. Moving on to cool as a cucumber. We talked about how this describes someone who's very calm, and they're brave, they're courageous, and they don't lose their cool when the situation gets dangerous or other people start, going a little bit crazy. They go bananas, maybe. I'm not like this, but I have a brother-in-law. He's a cop, so it's probably good as a police leader to be this way, but he's very cool. Other people can be around him swearing and doing things, and he is so cool. He never loses his cool. And he always sees things in a very logical, calm way, which is really nice because my family's very energetic, you could say. And he copes with a lot of high-pressure situations. To cope with means to deal with something, to handle it well. If you can suppress, or suppress just means to contain or push back. If you can, kind of push back on your emotions, and keep your head just means don't lose your head, which means you go crazy. You need to be calm when things are crazy and chaotic, especially, like in natural disasters and earthquakes. We need calm people to be helping rescue people who are in danger. You need to keep your head or keep your cool. And if you can do that, then you're certainly someone who can be described as being cool as a cucumber.
And if you're not as cool as a cucumber, we could describe you as losing your cool, okay? Sometimes when I would get angry, my father would say, oh, you're losing your cool there. You're not being calm. You're getting excited.
Don't be a hothead.
Yeah, don't be a hothead. Don't be such a firecracker, etc. Don't have such a short fuse. But, you want to be as cool as a cucumber, and you want to cope with difficult situations. You want to deal with those difficult situations, and you need to suppress those emotions and keep your head. Don't lose your cool. And then if you can do that, you will be as cool as a cucumber. And the explanation for this is simple. A cucumber's interior is always significantly cooler than the outside air, potentially by as much as 11 degrees Celsius. I didn't know that, actually.
Isn't that interesting? I didn't either.
But it seems logical because, when you cut open a cucumber, it does taste pretty cool inside.
It's refreshing,
It is very refreshing. There is a logical explanation for this phrase, to be as cool as a cucumber, because, as it says here, the interior is cooler than the exterior. Interior just means the inside of something, like you may be an interior decorator, for example.
In that case, though, you're using it as an adjective.
Indeed. Interior here is being used as a noun. The area inside something. The interior, you could say the interior of a country, for example, like the parts of the country that are away from the ocean, like Nantou is in the interior of Taiwan. But in this particular case, yes, the inside or the interior of the cucumber is cooler than the outside air. Here we've got the word potentially, which means up to 11 degrees. It has that potential. Potential just means the possibility of something happening in the future.
Yeah, you have the capacity to develop into that. So it's nice to know. I think that's significantly cooler. I had no idea, but it makes sense now. Now, hot potato is our last vegetable. I love this one. You may be as cool as a cucumber, but you can overcome the problems. Oh, but can you overcome the problems posed by a hot potato? Good question. If you overcome something, you handle something that's difficult and you're successful at it. Now, if you're saying you're coping with something We don't know the outcome at that point. But if someone has already overcome a problem, they've already been successful at handling or coping with some sort of difficulty. But can you overcome the problems posed by a hot potato? What does this phrase mean? Well, it describes a situation or subject. And let me add here, it can even be a person that is controversial, awkward, or embarrassing in some way. I've heard guys who are dating a girl and maybe she's my friend and I talk to her afterwards, and she says, yeah, he dropped me like a hot potato, which just means he gave her no warning. He didn't say, I just don't think this is working out. He just kind of dropped her and didn't really explain his reasons. And if you think about a hot potato, you understand why. When potatoes are hot, boy, are they hot. You need, to wrap your hands in something to protect them because they can really burn your hands if they're really hot. So to drop something like a hot potato, you just drop it quickly. Controversial, I'll take the first word and then give you some more to describe here, Tom. Controversial is something that's likely something that the public is debating. Not everyone agrees on it. Something that's controversial is usually political, or maybe it has to do with religion, perhaps. But they're subjects that not everyone agrees on. So, yeah, you have to be careful when you're talking about a controversial subject.
Like here in Taiwan, relations with China or the mainland are controversial.
Yeah.
A hot potato could describe such a situation. It's awkward, it's controversial, or perhaps embarrassing, like if you forgot to pull up your zipper, for example, or if you have food stains around your mouth. That might be embarrassing if somebody told you, hey, you've got something stuck on your lip there. Oh, how embarrassing. How could I let that happen?
So it might come from a longer phrase, it says here, to drop something like a hot potato. You could drop a topic like a hot potato, which happens a lot in meetings at work in particular. Sometimes they get awkward or controversial, or people start getting angry. Sometimes it's better just to drop that topic like a hot potato. I told you how I've heard it used when somebody's dating someone else and just dumps them quickly. They get dropped like a hot potato or dumped like a hot potato. This means to quickly avoid being associated or connected with one of these troubling topics or situations. Both idioms refer to the fact that a freshly baked potato is so hot that you don't want to hold it in your hands. You certainly don't. If you refer to something, it just means you're mentioning that particular topic, subject, or person. So, yeah, it does refer to the fact that baked potatoes that are hot out of the oven, boy, are they hot. Yeah, because I often will boil potatoes and then take off the skin. I usually put it under cool water for a while so that I can actually take the skin off. Potatoes' thick skins and high water content help them to retain or keep the heat inside them.
That's why potatoes can be so hot. And another idiom that is common is to describe someone as a couch potato, somebody who just sits there all the time watching TV or maybe playing with their phone or whatever, not really doing anything. Hey, you're a real couch potato. But there are plenty more fruit and vegetable idioms out there.
True.
If you don't like the ones we've presented, well, that's just a case of sour grapes. Hey, grapes are things that we like, but we still complain about them. I think you have this phrase in Chinese as well, sour. It's just sour grapes. You should be grateful for what you have and quit complaining. Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. It's time now to listen to our Chinese teacher.
再来，我们来看下面。下面呢，一个片语是 cool as a cucumber。这个片语意思就是很冷静哦，处变不惊，保持冷静。好，那我们来看看这个比喻是怎么来的。其实呢，我们用这个片语来表现一个人的冷静、勇敢跟大胆。小黄瓜这种东西，它呢，据说它的温度哦，它表皮的温度跟它里面的温度差距很大，所以这边就说了，差距可以到11度之多。好，我们要注意一个用法，也就是他提到了这内外的差距。介系词by， 我们晓得 by by 介系词当然也有很多的用法哦，我们常常拿来by 加一个动作，就表示是用什么样的行动来解决问题等等。by 如果加交通工具，就表示是搭乘某某交通工具，比如说 by bus。可是呢 by 它还有一个用法，大家要特别注意的就是说，当你在比较两个东西那不管是大小、年龄时间、空间，当你讲到 by 后面，它可以加上一个差距。所以说像这边是指那个温度的差距， by as much as 11 degrees Celsius， 意思就是说它的差距温度之差可以高达11度之多。好，我们来看到这个 by 加介系词记得这个介系词的用法代表差距。好，我们接下来再看下面第3个片语，好，跟蔬菜有关的，这边是 hot potato。Hot potato 就是表示一个东西真的让你很难处理可能有一点争议性，或者是让你很尴尬，都有可能。所以 hot potato 基本上就是很棘手，不知道该怎么处理的东西或事物。好，来我们看看那这个片语怎么来的。其实它如果比较完整的说法是 to drop something like a hot potato，这样子的说法就是因为它很烫嘛，所以你想把它给丢了。好，不过简化之后，当你描述任何东西说它是一个 hot potato， 大家就很明白了，就知道说哇，它就像刚出炉的 potato 一样，非常的烫手。好，那我们再注意一下一个地方，后面说这个片语的意思是表示你想要避免跟任何这些让你很感到困扰的主题牵扯上关系。Avoid 这个动词，我们停在这边看一下Avoid 这个动词当然就表示避免，不过有一点它是一个及物动词，意思就是说，当你要避开某件事，avoid something， 它是直接加后面的受词。不过，如果你现在加的这个是一个动作那你就要记得这个动词要改成 VING， 这个就是一个动名词的用法了。本来的片语是 be associated with something， 就是和什么扯上关系。可是这个 be 动词呢，放在 avoid 后面，你就必须要变成了VING， 这是一个动名词的用法。好，最后的结尾也很有趣，各位听众们，如果你不喜欢所介绍的这几个片语，那他就开玩笑的说，那可能是什么 ？A case of sour grapes。Sour grapes 就是酸葡萄。好，我们今天讲解就到这边结束，我们下次见。
That's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, and please join us again next time for another edition of our program. And welcome to the month of October. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.